Labor Talks was John DeRozier, recorded at Chippewa Valley Community Television in Eau Claire, Wisconsin.
Hello and welcome to Labor Talks. Today's special guest is County Board Supervisor John Manydeeds, District 24. John is also the chair of the Judiciary and Law Enforcement Committee, and he is on the county's Administration Committee. John is also a public defender, and my name is John DeRozier, and John Manydeeds, welcome to Labor Talks. Good to have you here.
Good to be here.
Okay, and how long have you served on the Eau Claire County Board, and why did you become a County Board Supervisor?
I've been on the County Board since 2009, and the reason why I became a County Board Supervisor is a good question. At the time, the supervisor who represented my district, Mark Schmidt, had retired. They were looking for a replacement for him, and I received a phone call, and I said I would be more than happy to be on the board.
And that's it?
That is it.
At the time, the jail expansion, the courthouse expansion was an issue. Would that have been?
That was when I was there, yes.
Mm-hmm.
That was an issue when I was on the board.
And did that become an issue right about the time you got on the county board or afterwards?
Right in the middle of it. When I became a county board member, the discussion about the jail was starting, and it was shortly after I came on the board that we started having serious discussions about location of the building, how the building was going to be made up, and things of that sort. I ended up on the building commission itself.
Mm-hmm. Was the courthouse expansion one of the reasons you did get on the county board? Did that enter your thinking at all, John?
No, not at all.
Not at all. Yeah, okay. Now, what are the major challenges facing the county board?
I think the biggest challenge that's coming across as far as the board is concerned is going to be the issue of compensation of county workers. At this point, there is a compensation study that has been done. I haven't seen it yet. I'm really concerned about what it will say and what the effects are, and assuming that it means that some positions are underpaid and some may be overpaid, I'm not really sure. We're going to have to find the money somehow to make these positions comparable with other counties and with private type organizations.
Okay. Now, obviously, Act 10 has an effect on all of our local governments. Could you explain how Act 10 is, from your point of view, how is it having an effect on Eau Claire County?
Act 10 had, I think, an unexpected effect on Eau Claire County. One of the things that happens is that workers really don't have a lot of input as far as their conditions are concerned. I believe that workers are being told they have to work, which is good, and they're able to earn money, but some of the unintended effects has to deal with if a person, for example, wants to go on vacation. If a person wants to go on vacation and then they get called back to work, what ends up happening is they don't get credit for the time that they were off. Why is that important? If I'm a worker and I'm doing 40 hours this week, I'm in the highway department, I'm putting in 40 hours, I take 8 hours off and a snowstorm hits, and I'm called to come in on a Saturday or on a weekend or overnight, I don't receive overtime. What they do is they will take away my 8 hours of vacation, credit it back to me, and I get paid for the 8 hours at normal time, and then after that I receive time and a half or whatever ends up happening. That's a problem because the workers that in the county are on a new type of vacation and sick time thing. They are allotted so many hours per year to use for vacation or for sick time, and at the end of the year they either use it or lose it. And You know, if you're a highway worker and you are being diligent, or if you're in the jail and you're being diligent and you're taking vacation times when you think it's appropriate, and then you're being brought back in and you're getting credited that vacation time back, you're going to have to find a real busy way to do it at the end of the year, where you hope you're able to use all your vacation time or whatever you want to call it. I think it's technically called PTO time, personal time off in Eau Claire County. You have to figure out a way of getting that done while making sure that you're getting all your work done at the same time. It's an unforeseen effect, I think, of how they're doing things. Act 10 has some other things. Some of it's good, some of it's not so good. One of the things that happened was that there are positions that are coming up that we're not receiving good candidates for as far as what we're offering for salary. We're receiving candidates that are saying, I would like to take this job, but that salary is not enough money, and they're walking. You know, and it's going to cause us to have to look at reassessing what the credentials are to fill these positions and things of that sort. It gets to be very complicated. Another unintended effect of Act 10 is that we're seeing a certain lack of loyalty to county organizations by workers. At one point in time, I think that if you were a county employee, you felt fairly loyal to working for that county regardless of what it was. However, what's ended up happening now is you're discovering that county employees and municipal employees are finding out that they can go to other counties and do the same job and start receiving better pay at a different county. You lose that level of loyalty. As a good example of it tends to be people that are working in the county jail. We lose our corrections officers on a regular basis. Now we're starting to get them back. The reason why we lose, why it's such a bad thing for us to lose corrections officers, is that if you think about it right off the bat, it doesn't sound like it's a big deal. You know, we're losing a worker, we should be able to fill them in. In the jail, each position, according to NIC, which is the National Institute of Corrections, requires 5.3 workers to fill. And that takes into account that each person has sick time, vacation time, whatever they're going to use during the course of the year, that you can't have one person manning this position 24 hours a day, 7 days a year for the full year. So you have 5.3 positions. We in the county did not approve 5.3 positions per spot in the jail. We approved 5 positions, so we're already short 0.3. When a worker quits or leaves or retires or whatever, that person that is hired to replace them has to go through the process of being assessed. They have to have a psychological done. They have to have a background check. They have to receive their certification when they're hired. When it comes time for that person to actually be able to fill one of those 5.3 positions per position or per spot, we have spent approximately $55,000 on the county to get that person up. So it's very expensive for us to lose it to that person to a competing county. When that person goes, we have to do the whole thing all over again. And if you start losing 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 people, you're starting to talk a lot of money. Fortunately for us in Eau Claire, it seems as though some of that is starting to return back to our county. The one advantage of the new jail building that has lent itself very nicely to us in the county has been it offers a little bit nicer working circumstance. I was talking with the sheriff earlier. We had received some workers from other counties that came to Eau Claire and saved us that same amount of money that we've been investing earlier. So we're seeing a lack of loyalty to counties. I don't know if that's an important issue or not, but the bigger issue is that when a person works, whether it's in the jail or a child support worker or a person in the clerk of courts or wherever, there's a certain amount of money that we as taxpayers pay to get that person qualified to be able to handle those positions by themselves.
You've pretty much covered the issue of morale. But I'm going to ask this question anyway. How is the morale of our county employees? What can be done to improve it? And specifically, could you talk about the morale of the people who work in the county jail? Because they really have a dangerous job, don't they?
They do have a dangerous job. One of the things that happens specifically with the jail, and I'll just use that as an example for right now, is that there was legislation that came around. It's not Act 10 legislation, but it's other legislation that determined that they were not to be considered the same as other law enforcement officers. And as such, we end up with people that are working in the jail that are in their late 50s. We have people that are 58, 59, going on those ages, working up in the jail. And as with an older population of employees, and I'm one of them, I'm an older employee at this point, they start developing health issues and things of that sort, and that contributes to a lot of the problems as far as working in the jail is concerned. You know, if I'm an employee and I'm working in the jail, let's just say, and I've put in my hours this week and I get called in, I may be earning overtime, which is okay, but I get called in this week because somebody is sick or somebody has left a position or whatever. I may have plans, and those plans may involve going to school if I have young children, watching them participate in school plays or school activities or sporting events or whatever. Or I may have other things planned which are not like vacations out of the area, but necessary time off. And I think that affects our workers as well.
Excuse me. One of the things that has occurred to me is that if somebody works 10 days in a row or 12 days in a row, and I've talked to county employees who've told me that that's the case sometimes, correct?
I don't think I've ever heard anybody ever tell me they've had to work that many days in a row.
I've talked to people in the jail.
Okay.
These are rare circumstances, but they do happen. The fact is, and sometimes they work, they put in 14-hour days.
Okay.
All right? Now, that being the case, wouldn't that make the job just that much more dangerous for those people in that fatigue could be setting in?
Oh, yes, obviously.
And they become a little, they're not functioning at full capacity.
Well, I don't think it's an easy job in the jail to begin with if you're working with normal sleep and a normal shift. I think anytime you start having extra hours put on you, I think it puts you at risk to not be on your best performance.
And haven't we had some rare instances where county jailers have been assaulted in jail?
Yes.
And can you talk about that a little bit? Or?
Not too much, because I'm not that familiar with it. I have heard of it. I know that a lot of that happened, not a lot, but some of it happened in the old jail, and that's because of the layout of how the jail was, which was one of the reasons why we looked at changing where the jail was and how it's situated. The new jail has had some issues, but I think it tends to be more of the breaking in kind of thing, where they were unaware of distances and times and things of that sort. And yes, some of the employees have had bad things happen to them.
Mm-hmm. Now, we talked about the morale. What do you think can be done to improve the morale of our county employees? And if you want to focus on the people who work in the jail, go right ahead.
I think that's a real difficult question. As a county board supervisor, I have a duty to the people in the community to make sure that their property taxes are kept at a reasonable level, which I think we've done. I have a duty to make sure that we're spending money wisely. On the other hand, when you look at the members of our county government that are working in these positions, and all these positions, not just the jail, have unique and special problems. If you're a social worker in human services and you're out investigating, you run risks there. If you are a person who is a child support worker, you're running risks with people that are coming in that are upset about the amount of child support they're having to pay, or bad things that are happening with them as a result of them having to pay child support. I think all of that gets to be very difficult. How can I affect morale, or what needs to be done? I think that the working conditions in the county tends to be dictated by the supervisors in each department. I think that if you have good supervisors, you're going to do well. Currently, we're in the process of looking for a new county administrator. The previous administrator did a wonderful job. He was very good. He was excellent. I got to know him very well. And that is a big void that's going to be needed to be filled. That's the start of it. The rest of it tends to be, what all of us want. We all want better pay. We all want better benefits, things of that sort. How much of that as a county board can we provide? Not much. And the reason why is that historically, and this has been regardless of whether it's a Democratic or a Republican governor, it's easier to run on a platform saying I reduced property taxes than to say, I did this, I did that, I did something else as far as the state budget. Property taxes do not affect the Madison budget one iota. It looks good to be able to put restrictions on the counties and say, I'm saving your property taxes. In Eau Claire, we are restricted under the current law of raising the property tax levy the greater of 1% or whatever increase in new building there is in the county. Now, we've been having some years where we've been having some good construction going on in the county, so we've been able to do a little bit. But we run into problems. For example, last year with the sheriff's budget. The sheriff came back, we have $0 budgeting going on. So in the sheriff's department in particular, we had so much money from the previous budget that was approved. The sheriff was expected to maintain his budget at that level. The problem was that we also gave a 1% raise to the workers in that department. That department is a very personnel-heavy department. You have deputies that are on the road, you have investigators, you have the corrections officers, you have the administrative people, and obviously you have the upper echelon, the sheriff, the undersheriff, and the captains. I guess we don't have an undersheriff, but the captain and various lieutenants. So when everybody gets a 1% raise except for the sheriff because he's an elected official, you've hit 1% more than what your previous budget was already across the board. And that is not actually 1%, it's actually more than that. So with the sheriff's budget last year, we ended up taking $60,000 out of his operational budget, which is $60,000 less bullets, gasoline, paper, those kinds of things out of his budget that he has to come up with somehow internally. And I think he's having a rough go of it. I think that the only thing that has been a very good blessing is something we've been all blessed with as a community, which is lower gasoline prices. If gas had maintained what it was at last year or the year before, I think the sheriff would be in really deep trouble. He was also told to cut $300,000 out of his budget in addition to that, which he took out of overtime. That feeds back into the previous problem we were talking about.
Yes, it does.
So, when you have those kinds of issues going on within a single department, and then you multiply it out across all of the county departments, you're seeing more people expecting to do more with less resources as far as county employees are concerned. In theory, if you can do more with less, you should be able to do everything with nothing. And of course, that's not true.
Now, this is not one of the questions I said I was going to ask you, but it did occur to me. Are you familiar at all, or how familiar are you with this proposed county property assessment proposal?
I'm not real familiar with it. I'm not. I know that there has been a certain amount of opposition to it. I'm not sure I know enough about it at this point in time to really give a good opinion about it.
That takes care of that little problem.
There you go.
And let's see, regarding wages, I know you mentioned this before, but point blank, regarding wages, isn't the county restricted to just how much it can negotiate with unions, and isn't that restriction imposed by the state legislature?
Right, it's state law. It was the legislature and the governor that signed the bill into law. We are allowed to give a maximum percentage per year in a salary increase, and you know, there's only so much you can do with it.
I just wanted to bring that out
Yes.
because Governor Walker, as you well know, is one of my favorite people.
I do know that.
I'll bet you do. Let's see. There is one other thing that I'd like to ask about, and it's this Confluence project. Now, you're only one person on the county board, but people do listen to you, John. Sometimes even I listen to you. Okay? But what are your thoughts on the county continuing to support the Confluence project with the money that it had previously pledged? And I cannot remember right now what that amount is. I think it's $5 million, but I'm not sure.
I believe that is the amount we pledged, was $5 million.
Could I interrupt for just a minute?
Sure.
I was right.
Okay, that's a rarity, and I'm glad it's on film, John, because it's one of those rarities that occur. But yeah, I think that there's no discussion about backing away from it at this point, if that's what you're asking.
Yep.
I think we're fully committed to, supporting the Confluence project, and that has been sustained by the referendum that occurred at the election last year. There's obviously support in the city and in the county for it, and we will continue doing it. It's unfortunate that it was in the budget process, it was cut out, but I think there's hope it gets reinstated somewhere back in the budget process. But I don't know. That's a real complicated process. I'm hoping it gets reinstated. I think the Confluence project is a very important project for our community. It's an interesting idea that you have the Chamber of Commerce supporting it, saying that it's a necessary thing, and that you have business leaders coming in and saying, we need this as a way of being able to recruit good workers to come to the community. I've talked with young people who don't want to come back to northern Wisconsin towns simply because there's nothing for them to do. I'm from Ashland originally. I've seen the census numbers from northern counties, Hurley, which is Iron County, Ashland County, and those. And it is progressively becoming older. The problem with having older communities is that they're not spending money. They're not spending money on clothes for their children. They're not spending money on, food for their children. They're not spending fun times for their children. They're doing stuff for themselves, and if they're on a limited budget, they can only spend so much money, and that's not good for local economies. Eau Claire is blessed because we have the university here. We have the Chippewa CVTC here, Chippewa Valley Technical College here. We have some very good businesses here that are starting to flex their muscles. We have JAMP. We have, the traditional companies that have been here and will continue to be here. But the hope is at some point that we'll be able to inspire young people to come back. The young people that were going to be here are the ones that are the creators, the people that think of things, that look at something and dream. And I'm at that point in my life where I look at things as like, well, that's nice, and I walk away. I think that younger people look at things and they'll say, well, that's nice, but I think we can make it better. And that's what we need here in this community. That's why the Confluence is important as far as business is concerned, as far as this county is concerned, and as far as the county board is concerned. If we don't have people buying or building houses, then we can't give raises to people and we can't raise the types of money that we need to do within our county government to sustain the types of services that we do. It's not good for county organizations to have to reduce services, to reduce hours, to reduce the type of coverages that we do. I think if people knew how many deputies were out on the road at any point in time, it would be shocking to them to hear that so few deputies are on the road during a shift.
There would be those people who would want to take advantage of that, period.
There are. And, you know, it goes toward an orderly community is what I would say.
Getting back to the Confluence Project, obviously I support it, you support it. One of the things I really appreciate about the Confluence Project is it's a very attractive proposal. I mean, physically attractive. It makes Eau Claire look better. It really does, as compared to some of the buildings that were there. So I think it enhances the beauty of Eau Claire. The other thing, and I'm sure you're going to want to add on to this, but the other thing is that we've had some young entrepreneurs, some young business people, invest an awful lot of money into the Confluence Project. I think that the least we can do is to support them. And that's my 5 cents worth now. Well, any comments?
I do have comments. You know, we're trying to make people be entrepreneurs and to be small business people. I remember when we were talking and receiving public input at the county board from various people about things they want to do. There was a young man who was talking to us who had been working as a cook at the downtown hotel, and he looked across the street and saw an opportunity, and he opened up an art supply shop. Then he bought a restaurant next door and has done wonderful things with that. He owns apartments above those buildings and has done a wonderful job. And it's those types of people that we need to have in the community to be creative. And that's the whole nature of it. It's small businesses that are going to drive us, and it's having things that attract people downtown that is going to help us the most, and the Confluence does that.
Now, are there any questions I did not ask? And I'm serious, that you want me to ask? Is there anything you'd like to add to this conversation?
You know, John, frankly, I think I'm pretty long-winded to begin with. So, no, I don't think so. I think you've asked everything that I would ask me.
That's our program for today. My thanks to John Manydeeds. You're much appreciated, John.
Thank you, John.
Really. Now remember, you can catch Labor Talks on YouTube. Just Google YouTube, Labor Talks, and it'll come right up. And you may want to contact your respective state legislators and express your support for this program as well as community television. Thank you very much.
Chippewa Valley Community Television is made possible by continuing community support. If you would like to volunteer or make a donation, you can contact us by calling 715-839-5067 or on the web at www.cbctv.org.